And then it was time to look for a librarian. So Dorothy Morrison had just gotten her master's degree from TWU. And some of you may remember Dorothy, but she came to her interview right after she had had all of her teeth extracted. And she was kind of like this during the interview, but something about her charmed us and made us realize that she understood that we wanted an information center, we wanted an education center, but most of all, we wanted a community center. We wanted this to be connected to our community. We wanted them to come and feel welcome here and want to use it. She understood all of that. So she was hired, and she became the librarian and was here, I believe, for about 16 years the first time. And anyway, I have to smile, but the Texas State Library was our friend. They sent reference collections. The head of their agency came here several times to speak to us. We felt really in touch with them. They were like our partner. And then on Tuesday afternoons at 4 o'clock, we didn't have enough room to have a story hour, so we had dial a story. You could call into the library. We had a couple of lines there. And it was before cell phones even. And those of us who were volunteering would read a story. I'm sure there will be people in here that remember reading those little stories, and the children loved it. They really did. Phil Thompson had been our mayor during all this, and he used to kid with me a little bit later. He said I would come, and I don't remember this. This embarrasses me. He said I would come to his office with something that needed to happen, and I would just sit there. And finally he would have to say yes, so I would go and he could go to work. But he became a trustee, and he loved the library, and we laughed about it. It was really kind of funny. But shortly after this little building opened, 3 visitors happened in Marshall. They were from California and St. Louis. They were the Andrew Norman Foundation trustees. There were 3 of them. 2 sisters, Virginia Gold Olensi and Bernice Cranston. Bernice Gold Cranston. They were the Gold sisters. George was the husband of Virginia, and they were the 3 trustees for the Andrew Norman Foundation. They went to see Scotty Baldwin, who was their attorney because they had business here. And then they went to see Lewis's daddy because he was exactly the same age, and they wanted to visit him, which was right across from this little new library. And when they went into the Hub Shoe Store, there were some children and a mother coming out of the library, and the little child and the mother both had books tucked under their arms. And as fate would have it, I didn't know these people. Bunny was a librarian. So they saw that. They asked Scotty and Lewis's dad, and Lewis, who got into, he was always at the store, and they said they'd like to do something to help their old hometown because they had had such a happy growing up time here. And what did they think was going on in the town they could help? And all 3 of them said the library. They said, well, who could we talk to about it? And Lewis said, well, my wife has been working on it. And they said, well, we'll take her out to breakfast. Well, I'm allergic to breakfast. And Lewis comes home and says, okay. He says, there's some people here, they want to take you to breakfast, and they want to give something to the library. And I said, well, do they want to give a book or a building? And he said, I think a building. I said, I'll go. And I did go, and thank goodness I did. These were delightful people. They did make an offer. They wanted to give our efforts $125,000 to build a new building, and at that time that just sounded like so much money to me, and it's still a lot of money. And it didn't feel like it was going to be enough to do a building even then, but how can you turn your back on a gift to your city of $125,000? You couldn't, but I couldn't tell them. I could not speak for the community myself. So I said, well, that's just a wonderful offer, but you know, the hospital just had a $1 million drive. $1 million. Can you all believe that our community gave $1 million for our hospital? They had professional help to get that $1 million. And here this man is coming and saying to us, well, if you can just get a match of $125,000, it blew my mind. I thought, is there $125,000 left here? You know, would we be able to do that? How would we be able to? I said, let me speak to the Friends and the trustees, or at least to their leaders, and to the mayor, and see what their thinking is about this. I can't make that decision for my community alone. I never suffer alone. So they said, we will call you at 5 o'clock this afternoon. I said, great. I'll be at home by my phone. Well, I was there and by the phone, and I had talked to everybody I wanted to talk to. We were in complete agreement that even though we might not succeed, we had to try. There was no way we could say no to this after we had all worked so hard. So I sat by the phone, and at 5:15 the phone hadn't rung. 5:30 that hadn't rung. 5:45 it hadn't rung. I thought, do you think I've been working too hard? Am I having hallucinations? Maybe they weren't even here. Maybe there are no Gold Sisters. You know, it was the first time I'd ever seen them. But at 6:15, George called. George said, well, are you ready to go to work? And I said, I think so. And he said, well, I have some advice for you. Well, if somebody's going to donate $125,000, I'm going to listen to their advice. I said, what is it? He said, this project needs to go through the Friends. You don't need it to go through the city. He said, I've had experience with this. It will be so much easier and cleaner. Just have the Friends with the trustees plan it and do it, and then give it to the city, and then they can operate it. And then that will be perfect. So I thought it sounded like a good plan. So that's sort of what we did. And Finn Lewis was president of the Friends at that time. We decided that he would be the liaison with the Gold Sisters. He wrote beautifully, he liked to communicate, and back then you wrote letters. And so that was going to be his job, was to keep the foundation informed. And then the trustees were going to be in charge of the planning of the campaign and of the building. And the way we worked it out, we decided that Martin Spangler, who had been on the trustees, would be a good chairman for the trustees, and that I would become something like a project coordinator. I guess do whatever needed to be done. I really wasn't exactly sure. I'd never done anything like this. I didn't realize that you would have to have committees. You would have to take every decision to the committee after they did it. Then you would go to the trustees and get their approval. Then you would have to go to the Friends and get their approval, and then you would have to go to the city and get their approval. I had not a clue that that's what was going to happen. But that is what did happen, and Martin agreed to be chairman of the trustees, and he was wonderful. He always put a little quote on his agenda. Some of you who do agendas might remember this. He was inspirational. I can remember one in particular that was on one of the agendas. It said, your ship can't come in if you don't send some out. It was a Dale Carnegie quote that he had a book or something. Anyway, send out ships. We sent them everywhere.